At the end of the Civil War, much of the South that had seen the vast majority of the war had been just completely torn apart. The farms and homes had been burned. The economy was wrecked. A lot of the guys who left to go fight never made it back. And for the ones who did make it back, I think it's safe to say that many of them probably came back changed men because of what they had seen, or in some cases, what they had done. Men like Frank and Jesse James, who had served with William Quantrill and Bloody Bill Anderson, and guys who had become quite accustomed to killing. Whenever they came back from the war, well, they kind of continued that pattern of violence. Jesse James and Frank James, of course, became very well-known outlaws, and their outlaw career started right here at this bank in Liberty, Missouri. What we are looking at right here is the Farmers Exchange Bank in Liberty, Missouri. This building was constructed in 1858, and on Tuesday, February 13th of 1866, there were about a dozen ex-Confederates who rode into town wearing Union overcoats, like what they did during the Civil War whenever they were making raids. And it's thought that Frank and Jesse James were a part of that. This bank was owned by a guy who was known to the James family and who had been a Union informant during the war, which might be why this bank right here was targeted to be the victim of the very first daylight robbery in U.S. history. So anyway, we're gonna go inside and take a look inside this historic structure. All right, well, we just walked into the bank and holy smokes, this place is legitimately cool. This feels just like you're walking into a bank in 1866. And I talked to the guide at the front desk, and she said that the floor, the ceiling, the windows, the doors, and the bank vault over here are all original to this bank. After the robbery, they had to sell off a bunch of the furniture because the money wasn't insured, but they've restored it to look just like what it would have looked like in February of 1866. All right, so we're going to kind of show a few things here and kind of tell about the robbery that happened here with the James gang. All right, now here's again another look at the bank. Now on February 13th of 1866, there would have been two people working the bank here, a guy by the name of Greenup Bird and his son William, who was about 18 years old and was helping out at the bank that day. So by their account, there were two men who entered into the bank wearing Union soldier overcoats, and we don't know exactly who those two men were. It's believed that it might have been Frank James and Archie Clement, but we just don't know for sure. So whenever they came in, they said that there was one guy who stood by this stove and was warming himself up, and the other one stepped up to the counter and laid down a bill and asked for an exchange. So William left his desk and was approaching the counter, and whenever that happened, the men drew their guns. So at that point, the bank robbery was in motion here. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this incident, this is the first daylight robbery that had ever occurred in the United States, the first daylight robbery of a bank. This is something that would have been completely foreign to William and his dad. So their account says that the two men ended up jumping over the counter, and while the father was held at gunpoint, the other guy told William to go in, gave him a white sack, and told him to go into the vault and fill it up. And apparently William was a little bit scared and wasn't moving fast enough and got clocked with a revolver. But anyway, here is the vault that he was forced into to get the money. Right now, a quick thing about this vault that is really interesting to me. Whenever they were constructing these things, they would pour a concrete slab first, and then they would build 3 walls of the vault. And you can see it's even got a concrete ceiling overhead. At that point, they would bring the safe into the vault and then build the 4th wall around it and put in this big giant door. That safe is larger than the door, with the idea being that people couldn't come in and basically remove the safe and load it up and take it away. But whenever this bank was being robbed, William and his father were forced into the vault after they filled the money bag, and then the robbers left, but they forgot to lock the door. So William and his father ran out afterwards and started hollering out the window that the bank was being robbed. Right now, the robbers made it out of the bank with about $60,000, which would have been an astronomical amount of money at that time. And there was one fatality in the robbery. Standing right here in this area, generally, was a young 17-year-old boy by the name of George Wymore. And he ended up being shot. He called out that the bank was being robbed, and the robbers shot him. It's not sure. Frank and Jesse James were from this area, so we don't know if Frank and Jesse recognized him and knew that they would be implicated in the robbery, and that's why they killed him, to cover up the evidence, or if it was an accidental shooting or what. But anyway, there was a lot of lead that was flying around in this area as these robbers were exiting the bank. But yeah, George Wymore, whose nickname was Jolly, ended up being the one fatality in this robbery. Okay, we're gonna hop back in the Jeep and take a drive to another place associated with the James brothers. All right, well, here's the deal with being an outlaw or a criminal, or just really making poor life choices in general, is that eventually those life choices are going to catch up with you. And whenever they do, well, you might find yourself ending up in a place like this right here. This is the Jackson County Marshal's house and jail, where notorious outlaw Frank James found himself in 1882 after the death of his brother Jesse. So we're going to dodge in here and see if we can take a look at the jail cell where this notorious outlaw was held. Okay, so we're getting ready to enter into the museum here and into the jail. It's kind of a unique setup here. So right here on this side would have been the jailer's home. And then over here on the right, this is the actual jail. And they have several living historians here today who are kind of helping to explain things. But like the jailer's wife would cook meals and things like that for the inmates, and they would leave their home right here. And right in here is where the jail was. All right, we've kicked on a light here so that we can see a little bit better, but here is the jail cell, and each one of these cells could hold up to 4 guys, and there are a few famous people who were housed in this jail cell. William Quantrill was one of them. He was only here for a night, but probably the most famous was Frank James. And this right here is the cell that he would have been held in. So after the death of Jesse James in 1882, Frank James gave himself up. There was kind of a big ceremony where he, showed up and, took off his gun belt and everything like that. And they allowed him to kind of dress up his cell a little bit, and I guess make it a little bit more homey. But anyway, this is the very jail cell that outlaw Frank James was held in the 1880s. Oh, and here's the bathroom. Here's another cell that they have kind of converted a little bit to do some interpretation. So if we look here, this is a lock and key that would have been used on the cell doors in 1859. And they also have some shackles here. And of course the old classic ball and chain. Again, this would have been used in the 1859 jail. And then they also have some pictures of some of the residents of this jail. And again, see some more of the shackles. Ooh, and they also have some shivs that were made. Dang. So I just saw this here on the wall of one of the cells. They have some etchings in the wall. Now, when these would have been made, I don't know, but it's certainly interesting. Here's another one of the cells here in this jail, and man, it is hard for me to wrap my mind around 4 guys getting packed in here. And I guess this is for somebody, this is a cell if you're a little extra rowdy and need some additional restraints. They have a few artifacts here in the museum portion, including this saddle decoration, and obviously that says Younger on there. That would have belonged to Cole Younger, who of course was part of the James and Younger gang. And they also have a wallet here that was owned by a guy named Warren Welch. So he was a Confederate soldier under Sterling Price and was part of the raids with William Quantrill. And then they also have a gun belt here that belonged to another pro-Confederate guerrilla named Solomon Childs. Interesting. Okay, now here's something that is pretty crazy that I was just told a little bit ago. Here in this corner, if you look up, well, that is the drop floor where they would perform hangings right here in the jail. And I think the guy told me that there were 5 hangings that were performed here. But man, just imagine being the guy in this cell right here, or maybe even, this one right here, and they pull the bottom out from underneath this guy, and he comes dropping through the ceiling and hanging right here amongst all these other prisoners. That is nuts. We're actually going to see if we can maybe go upstairs and see if we can see where they were dropped from. Okay, walking through the house portion now, and I'm gonna run upstairs real quick and take a look around, see what there is to see. I love looking at these old period homes and kind of seeing what life would have been like. So this is the bedroom. This looks a little bit nicer than the jail cell. And if we move over in here, oh yeah, it looks like we got kids' room as well. All right, so again, as I mentioned, the jailer's house was attached to the jail itself. So this is the kids' room right here, and this is kind of crazy to think about, but if you look over here, on the other side of this wall would have been the area where the upper level of the jail was. So kids' room, criminal's room. Okay, well, the main reason that I came here was for the Frank James connection, but man, this has turned out to be fascinating in so many other ways. So I showed you the gallows downstairs. Well, right here in this cell is where they would take the prisoner, and then they would have this drop floor here, and they would, obviously be executed right here. So this is kind of dark, that you have these other prisoners in the cell. These people are watching the person go down, and the people down below are like seeing their feet as they are dangling. Like I said, dark, interesting, but dark. All right, that was actually pretty dang cool. I was going in here really just to kind of see where Frank James's cell was, and didn't know about all of the other stuff that was going to be in there, which is why you should go to these types of places, because you don't know what you don't know. But anyway, that was the jail that held notorious outlaw Frank James in the 1880s. All right. Well, we're going to hop back in the Jeep, head off to the next place. We are constantly exploring and learning new things on this channel, so if you found value in this video, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell to catch all of the new content when it comes out. And be sure to check the links in the description for more content and opportunities from our partners.